LA Kings fans are talking about the Phillip Danault trade. What's the Kings' next move? A trade for Auston Matthews. And is it time to rebuild now? That and more on part 2 of this week's fan feedback edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, also one of the co-hosts of Locked On NHL Game Night, a nightly podcast and YouTube show that recaps the night in the NHL, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. It is time to wrap up the second part of this week's fan feedback show. We had 25 emails this week. We did 12 in our first show. We're going to do 13 emails in this show. Keep in mind that all of them were written before the Kings' latest win over the Ducks. Also, there was some editing that had to be done to a few of the longer emails to try and make sure we cut it down and got everybody's emails into this show. So let's get right back into it, and we will start with Travis in SoCal. He says, been listening to your podcast via YouTube for a few months now, and I love the show and the recaps of the games. Thanks for what you do. Glad you found us, Travis. This season has been a struggle to watch, opposed to the last few years. The team just doesn't seem like they have that spark anymore, and the players don't really seem like they are buying in like they used to. Kopitar, for example, is only about 12 to 15 points away from the franchise record, as at this point, I am scared that he will not even get there. I don't think as Kings fans, we're ever witnessing Kopi go three to five games without registering a single point this consistently. And coming to the halfway point of the season, it has me afraid for his legacy because he certainly is deserving of the title. One other note, yes, I think Hiller needs the boot, and we need to bring in a coach like DeBoer that allows the Kings to feed into more dynamic offensive power, because having players like QB, Fiala, and Brant Clark on your team does no good if you don't let them off the leash a bit. QB may be another story, though, with no points in the month of December, writing this after their back-to-back home losses to Seattle and Columbus. I know the team wants to build around him, but if we keep him and he turns out to be a middle six dud that never truly blossoms into a star, maybe it would be best to trade him now while he's young and other teams want him for his potential. I think teams like Detroit and Pittsburgh, who have young centers in the NCAA, Max Plant and William Horkoff, that could thrive, that are thriving, could be future pieces, along with young pieces like Marco Kasper, who could be brought in now while the team rebuilds, retools. Just my 2 cents. Would love to know your thoughts. I hope your family had a great Christmas and Happy New Year to you and yours. And that was Travis in SoCal. Yeah, I was thinking before the last game about how bad it would be if the Kings missed the playoffs and Anze Kopitar doesn't break the record and become the Kings' all-time leader in points. Thankfully, he had a 3-point game against the Ducks, and even before that, I was still very confident that he would become the Kings' all-time leading scorer this season. I believe he's only 9 points away now from breaking the record. He's going to do that unless there's an injury. Please don't let that happen. As for trading Byfield, I understand the thinking on this. I doubt strongly this will happen. I think the Kings are going to stay patient with him. Obviously, there is that fear that he goes somewhere else and then suddenly turns into this special player we've been waiting for. So I would not be in favor of trading Quentin Byfield right now, but I get it. As for Pete DeBoer, you mentioned, I did hear Elliot Friedman say on TV that he sent Maple Leafs head coach Craig Berube a note letting him know that the rumors about DeBoer taking the Toronto job or being interested in the Toronto job are not true. For what it's worth, I have not heard that Pete DeBoer sent Jim Hiller a note saying that rumors he was going to take the LA job were not true. I'm not saying one way or another. I'm just saying it was interesting that wasn't part of that conversation. But, of course, Elliot Friedman was doing Hockey Night in Canada. The Toronto Maple Leafs are always a topic there. But I would assume if that was the case, he would have mentioned that as well. Steve in San Diego says, hate is a strong word. So let's just say that I heard directly from a former Kings player that the players did not like Daryl Sutter. He was obviously an old school hard ass, but look what he did for them. Can another hard ass turn this squad around? I think it's up to Luke and Ken at this point. And I mean now. Thanks for all you do, Eddie. I appreciate the fact that you speak your mind without regard for what the team might think, i.e. players, coaches, management, and ownership. You care about us fans. All the best, Steve in San Diego. This was in response to me saying on a show recently about Phillip Danault supposedly not liking Jim Hiller, that being, that's part of the reason why he apparently wanted out, as some say. I said the coach is not supposed to be friends with the players. That doesn't mean he has to be an a-hole either, but the coach's job is to get the best out of the players and win games. And if the players don't like him because he's a hard ass, then so be it. And Daryl Sutter, I don't believe was loved by his players, but I think they respected him, and he obviously got results, and that is what matters. And I personally did not like Daryl Sutter. I didn't like the way that he talked to the media, because I think the media is a conduit to the fans, and they ask the questions for the fans. At least that's what they're supposed to do. And he always talked down to the people in the media, didn't feel they were worthy of his time, and I didn't care for that at all. But as a Kings fan, I definitely appreciate the role he played in the Kings winning 2 Stanley Cup titles. I am grateful to him for that. As for me speaking my mind and caring about the fans, I mean, look, I think of you as me. I've always said, for better or for worse, I'm a fan first. Sure, I went to school for broadcasting. I've been in broadcasting for many, many years. First on the radio, now doing podcasts. So I think I know how to put a sentence or two together and how to do a show. But like I said, I'm a fan first. I come at this from a fan perspective. I try to be as level-headed as possible, but I also have the passion, I hope, of the fan. And hopefully you guys respect and like that. Oliver in Roy, Utah says, every day you're here, but this is my first email of the season. I didn't want to be too reactionary from game to game, so here I go. I wanted to address the question I sent in to you last season, or I wanted to address the question was, what would you rather be a fan of going forward, the Kings or the Ducks? If I recall at the time, you responded Kings, and some of the reasons you gave were that the Kings are a perennial playoff team, while the Ducks had prospects that had yet to prove anything at the NHL level. Can you take another shot at answering the question now that we are almost halfway through the season? I asked this question not to rile up Ed and Bray or some sort of gotcha question, but because as an organization, I think there needs to be a point where they realize the current core makeup of the team is not good enough, and adding pieces here and there is not going to make us contenders. We have 4 years of first-round exits in the playoffs, and I think this is all the evidence needed. I have not been a fan of Hiller, but honestly, this team just does not have the skilled players to compete against top teams. I think reality needs to set in, and a rebuild must happen. Players like Doughty, Byfield, Moore, and Kemper, the Kings should be willing to move for prospects or draft picks. The sooner this happens, the better chance we have at being in the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes. The only current players I would not trade are Fiala, Clark, and Kempe, and none of the prospects like Greentree or George. What are your thoughts on a complete rebuild, which means trading away current NHL talent to take on draft picks and prospects, as opposed to retooling, which seems like it means what's been going on the last couple of years? Thanks for all you do. Merry Christmas. Go Kings, go. Oliver in Roy, Utah. Well, I would never be a Ducks fan under any circumstances. But if you're asking me to put aside my personal feelings and look at the two teams objectively right now, there's no question at all the Ducks have a brighter future right now than the Kings. That said, the Ducks are also awful for about 8 to 9 years. And the question is, would you trade in being awful for 8 to 9 years to be where the Ducks are now, which is a team that appears to be on the rise, but there's no guarantee that this group is going to win a Stanley Cup at some point. It's hard to do. Only one team does it every year. So the point is, I think the Kings have been trying to be competitive. They've made the playoffs consistently. Yes, they haven't had the success in the playoffs that we would like. And look, there's going to be a kind of a reckoning here, I think, very soon. But it's not now. I just don't think the Kings are going to do it. And I understand what people are saying. We have other emails that are suggesting this as well, about cutting their losses right now and starting to trade off pieces and just completely turning these things around to try and get it going. I get the idea of that. I just don't think they're going to do it. And I think we're all in it this year to see what happens. And after that, there'll be a hard evaluation of things. But I don't see them suddenly deciding, well, we're just going to change things and we're going to go in a different direction starting right now. Jim in Janesville says, season's greetings. I'm sure there'll be a lot of input on the recent Kings performance, so I will leave that alone. My concern is the glaring hole at center, an aging Kopitar, a bumbling Byfield, newbie Turcotte, and ? Over half the season to go, and they are going with 3 centers, as it's obvious Hellenius is a ghost. If they do struggle into the playoffs, who's going to match up against the likes of McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon, or Eichel? Danault will be missed, and he must be replaced. And LaFerriere ain't the answer. That is Jim in Janesville. Like I said before, I believe the reports that Ken Holland did not want to trade Phillip Danault were accurate because he knew it was going to make the Kings a lot weaker down the middle. And that is a legitimate concern. I think Ken Holland has to go out and try and get a center, which is not going to be easy because centers are not easy to come by, which is why Phillip Danault, for all his faults this year, was still being sought by multiple teams. So that is the glaring weakness for the Kings right now, for sure. Up next, we have someone defending Phillip Danault. We'll get to that and more here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. The World Cup is coming back to North America, the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever, it is going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. And if you were in Los Angeles, the USA's first game is in LA on June the 12th against Paraguay. So you might want to get tickets for that. And the Gametime app is here to help you. It'll give fans a real advantage when it comes to getting seats. With Gametime, you can track prices as they drop in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You pull up the app, the layout makes it simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views, and the seat view feature is a game changer. You literally see what the pitch looks like from the exact seat you're going to buy before you buy it. Prices include fees up front, no last-second surprises at checkout. Alerts for teams and matches make it easy to grab tickets the moment they drop instead of missing out. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Download the app, make an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Our next email comes from, this is Chris in Glendale, California. He says, just curious if you've been watching any of the PWHL. I've been finding the games to be pretty exciting, and I'm hoping that LA gets a team soon. Not a lot of promotion out there, maybe an exhibition game at Staples. Yes, Staples. And that was Chris in Glendale, California. He is talking about the Professional Women's Hockey League. I don't watch it. It is going on right now. It's, to me, this, I don't understand why they have this during the NHL season and during the football season. I'm sure they have their reasons. I don't know what they are, but if they had this during the hockey off season, I think hockey fans might give it their time. But it's just competing at a really difficult time of the year. I'm not going to miss NHL games to watch PWHL games. But I will say, as far as women's sports go, if I were to watch women's sports, it would be hockey. And I will, if I can, try and watch some of the women's Olympic hockey. But like I said, this time of the year, I don't know why they have it this time of the year. It doesn't make any sense to me. They should, for hockey fans that are looking for a hockey fix during the off season, I think that would be a great time for them to have their season. But they don't ask me these things. Shane in Portland checks in. He says, I just watched the Kings lose to the Seattle Kraken, my wife's team. And while they were slightly less painful than the night before Columbus, another home loss has officially pushed me into festive despair. At this point, our power play has become actively harmful. I want NFL rules so we can decline penalties because every man advantage just murders whatever momentum we had. And even now, the penalty kill is getting wobbly. This team looks completely lifeless. Something has to shake them out of it. And since a Christmas miracle trade feels unlikely, that leaves me reluctantly with joining the what are we doing with Jim Hiller crowd, which I hate because I actually like the guy. But the inconsistency and the constant line tinkerings are driving me nuts. Nobody on this team has any chemistry, and how could they? Lines don't stay together long enough to learn each other's names, and nowhere is that more obvious than with Andrei Kuzmenko. The AAA line with Kempe and Kopitar flashed real magic last season, but it got broken up before it had a chance to cook this year. That's the pattern. Bail early, shuffle lines again, and wonder why nobody clicks. A very simple Christmas wish would put the AAA line back together and leave it alone for 2 weeks minimum. Then let them find something. Figure out a second line, and then you can play musical chairs with the bottom six all you want. I'm done waiting on the Quinton Byfield experiment. He was supposed to be the heir apparent to Andrei Kopitar. The hesitancy to trade Byfield has always been the fear that he'd go somewhere else and become the prince that we were promised. But that no longer concerns me. If other GMs, hi Toronto, still think he's some untapped gold mine, Ken Holland should at least pick up the phone and see what we can swindle. All right, I'm off to drown my sorrows in whiskey eggnog and yell at a mall Santa about the Kings. And that was Shane in Portland. I've said Andrei Kuzmenko needs to be in the top six to get anything out of him. I will say in Jim Hiller's defense, when the team is not clicking, it's very hard to just keep everything status quo. So I'm not too hard on him trying things out a bit. But at some point, you do have to get settled on some lines. I'm not on the Byfield trade wagon, but I do understand the frustration. Gwyn checks in, and then I believe Gwyn is in Torrance. Gwyn's going to be mad because I don't remember because I met Gwyn several times. Anyway, she says, thanks for everything you do, Eddie, and happy holidays to you and yours. Same to you. I'm grateful for your constant content and your optimistic learning perspective. You help educate me with quality hockey knowledge. I have to chime in about the exit of Phillip Danault. I just like hearing people put Phil down for leaving. He's very forthright comments in the media interview were very clear. Phil may have been treated well by the Kings, but I feel like his role caused his feelings of helplessness. It cannot be denied that he was a well-liked leader on the team. He wore the A, and even though he wasn't a big scorer, as you have always pointed out, he has a very important role, and scoring goals is not what the Kings needed him for. When a good leader leaves an organization, there are a couple of very clear reasons. That leader has found that they need a change to grow their career in a different direction in a positive way. The other reason is that a leader sees that the organization is not serving its organization team well, per their opinion, and they try to collaborate with the existing management and are not heard or denied the ability to collaborate for a solution. For anyone who thinks Phil is a baby, which I have seen on social media, he is not. Many LA Kings fans are frustrated as hell with what has happened in the last handful of years. If you think Phil has some obligation to stay in an organization that he cannot help create success, he does not. It is not surprising that he left. He told us honestly and diplomatically that his time had come. Why would we fault him for seeing the writing on the wall and staying in an environment where he felt so defeated that his performance was negatively affected? It's just a symptom of the problem with the LA Kings. The management is failing on many levels. Don't ask the players to care more than the management. The moves are questionable and the coaching is mid. I could be wrong, but in my opinion, organizational management is not a strength of the LA Kings. Mid players can stretch to higher levels with good coaching and management. Look at many of our ex-Kings out there on other teams. Players have to do what is best for themselves and their family. He will be missed by many, and I wish him the very best. See you sometime soon. Happy holidays to you and your family. With it being the holidays, and all I wanted to have a more positive email, but bah humbug. And that was from Gwyn. Gwyn, I will have to agree to disagree with you on Phillip Danault. I don't agree with a player asking out in the middle of the season who has not had his role significantly reduced, who hasn't been benched or demoted. He signed a 6-year contract here, not 4.5 years. And I have a big problem with someone basically quitting on his team and his teammates in the middle of the season. If his role had been drastically reduced, if his ice time had been cut drastically, if he was getting scratched, I could understand that. I could understand a player wanting out and saying, if you're not going to use me, I'd like to go somewhere else and play where the team wants to use me. But his ice time wasn't drastically reduced. He was still being the third line center. He wasn't performing, and I still think the Kings valued him. I think Ken Holland did not want to trade him, but when he asked out, he felt like he had to. So if he wanted to wait till after the season was over and say, it's not working out here, I want to go, or if he would have done this before the season started, I could have understood it a little more or accepted it a little bit more. But I do not agree with players asking out in the middle of a season without any real reasons why, other than he's not happy or he's not performing. So do not agree with that. Sasan in Westwood says, wanted to get your perspective on a few things. Number one, Philip Danault's comments about having no purpose and feeling helpless and non-important. To me, that reflects incredibly poorly on the organization and team leadership. If one of your veteran guys says that about the team, has the culture in the organization really eroded that much in just a few short years that he was here in LA? Hiller's awkward retraction about the coaching of the power play in the post-game presser after the Blue Jackets loss. Hiller first stated that the decisions on the power play are primarily up to him now, and then immediately backtracked and said it was a group effort. Scoring is a major issue for this team. We're currently tied with St. Louis for last in the NHL in goals per game. Say what you want about the roster and their lack of scoring, but they are better than this. Being tied for last in the league is a disgrace. The home fans deserve better than this. To put this in perspective, the New York Rangers, who didn't win a game at home until November 10th, currently have more wins on home ice than the LA Kings. It is pathetic how bad they've been on home ice. I'm a season ticket holder. I go in person to as many games as I can physically be at, and I'm absolutely fed up with their inability to win. Thank you for all that you do. Sorry I had to be our version of Ebenezer Scrooge. Wishing you and your family Merry Christmas. That was Hassan in Westwood. I've had my say about Phillip Danault. He was a part of the leadership of this team, and he should have stayed for the rest of the season. I said at the time that when Jim Hiller was talking about being more involved in the power play, that I was surprised that he was saying that now, and it seemed very odd that he wouldn't have gotten involved in it sooner if that was the case. So those comments were odd. I mean, look, the Kings are never going to be one of the top scoring teams in the league, which they don't need to be. They just need to be better than they are. And they should be. We'll see. We saw that they can be better in the win over the Ducks, but it needs to be something that they continue going forward. They're not going to score 6 goals every game, but just more of what we saw, obviously, in that Ducks game. And yes, of course, they need to be better at home. Certainly understand the frustration of the season ticket holders, especially after last season when they were so amazing on home ice. We are talking Auston Matthews trade. We'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up to the next level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On LA Kings with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Check the link in the show notes to learn more. Our next email comes from Brian in Huntington Beach. He says, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. Kings hockey may be boring, but the off-ice gossip is very entertaining. After hearing that Phillip Danault wanted out of LA, I have to believe Gavrikov left because he did not like being immediately cast aside in favor of Drew Doughty last season. I know Doughty is a King legend, but at this point of his career, does he really deserve to be put on a high pedestal as the Kings place him? It's time for the Kings to move on from Doughty and Kopitar. When Kopi hangs up his skates, he will deserve all the accolades, and so will Doughty, but right now it feels like the Kings are trying to build the team around those two and their style of play. Lastly, with Phil's departure, do you know who gets the A? Thanks for another great week of shows. That was Brian in Huntington Beach. We talked about it at the time, but if Vladislav Gavrikov felt that he earned more minutes by the way he played when Drew Doughty was out, and then wanted to be on the top pairing when Doughty returned, then I could see him being unhappy with that. But I think Drew Doughty is still very much respected in the locker room. I find it hard to believe that anyone would have thought that when Drew came back, he wasn't going to get his old spot in the lineup back. But if that was the case, then yes, maybe that was part of the reason why Gavrikov wanted to leave. I still think Drew Doughty deserves to be on the top pairing. I don't think Brandt Clarke is ready for that yet. But I did say going into the season, I thought Drew's minutes needed to be reduced and Clarke's needed to be increased. And so far, that has been the case. Clarke's ice time is up from 16 minutes and 16 seconds last season to 18 minutes and 32 seconds this season. And Drew Doughty's average time on ice is down from 24 minutes and 8 seconds last season to 22 minutes and 39 seconds this season. That is the lowest average ice time per game that Drew Doughty has ever had in his career. So while I still think he's good enough to be on the top pairing, because I don't think Brandt Clarke's quite there yet, I am pleased to say Brandt Clarke's ice time has gone up. Drew Doughty's ice time has gone down on average. As to who is wearing the A now with Phillip Danault gone, I know it's being shared between Adrian Kempe and Mikey Anderson. I don't know how they're splitting that up. If maybe it's Kempe at home and Mikey on the road, but they are rotating the A between those two guys. And then, of course, Drew Doughty has the other A and Andrei Kopitar has the C. Frank in Burbank says, hope you had a great Christmas. Same to you, Frank. I spent part of mine hoping the Kings were planning a big move, especially after I read rumors that the struggling Toronto Maple Leafs might be considering trading Auston Matthews. Could he be a superstar that LA is needed? Sure, he's struggled this season himself, but maybe the Kings could swap some of our struggling players for him, perhaps a package including Byfield, more and some prospects or draft picks, with both teams playing far below expectations and the Leafs being under more pressure from their city and fans than the Kings are. Could this be the time for Holland to strike? Matthews is from Southern California, grew up in Phoenix. Maybe getting out of the hot Toronto spotlight and closer to home could bring him back to the 50, 60 goal scorer he can be. And maybe Byfield playing with Tavares or Nylander and out of Hiller's restrictive style could finally flourish. If not Matthews, maybe a trade for Tampa Bay for their struggling center, Braden Point. Again, maybe obtaining a star center while their stock is low. I've stated in previous emails that I'm ready for a coaching change, but since the Kings keep getting worse, I'm about ready to ask for a complete overhaul, not rebuild, but I wouldn't be upset about a new core group of players and coaching staff. Something smells rotten in LA, and it's time to clean out the fridge. The Kings' only saving grace is that other teams in the division have floundered a bit, or else the Kings would be in the basement. Enough of this good enough for now attitude, and let's get to a win-at-all-costs attitude. Do Dean Lombardi and Daryl Sutter need jobs? Anyway, thanks as always for taking the time to read my email, and thanks for all you do for us fans. Happy New Year, and as always, go Kings go. That is Frank in Burbank. I have heard the Auston Matthews rumors. I have heard he's actually interested in LA, which is a little bit refreshing. I am concerned about his health, though, and his ability to stay healthy. I know he had some treatments in Germany last season. He had to leave the country to get some kind of treatment. But right now I don't see any of that happening. I mean, as bad as the Leafs have been, and they're last in their division, they're 2 points out of the wild card spot. That's how crazy the East is right now. And of course, the Kings are in the playoffs. So I would be very surprised to see some kind of a blockbuster trade in that regard. Maybe depending on how the seasons go for both the Kings and the Leafs, maybe there's something in the offseason. Braden Point, I don't see that happening either. He is struggling, but the Lightning don't care. They care about what he does in the playoffs. He's won cups with them before, so I don't see them trading Braden Point. Spike in Fremont says, after last Thursday's outing against Seattle, I was going to pen something. I wanted to see if it still felt what it still felt. I wanted to see if I still felt like venting my spleen. Almost 48 hours later, the urge to purge is very omnipresent. That's a big word. There's a loud ticking noise coming out of El Segundo and Crypto.com arena. That's the clock ticking hard on Jim Hiller's tenure with the Kings. The lads did have a lot more shots on Tuesday compared to the shinny game against Columbus on Monday, but something is still missing. Line changes don't seem to do it. A lack of offense puts more pressure on everyone. At this point, it seems clear that they need to find a new coach as opposed to trading for more scoring. As the old saying goes, you can't fire 23 players, but you can't fire the coach. The talent is there. Then again, apparently QB's photo on a milk carton hasn't done the trick. He's still missing. Kevin Fiala's new nickname is Captain Hook because he can't move his feet to prevent a penalty. Where's Andrei Kopitar? I love the guy, but he needs to step up offensively. Corey Perry looked like an adult hockey league player coming down the wing with the puck the other night. I thought it was me out there. There have been some bad breakdowns on the blue line, and we've had some bad luck all year, but that happens to every team every year. As Popeye the Sailor used to say, that's all I can stands. I can't stands no more. Unfortunately, giving everyone a can of spinach ain't going to do it. As much as Ken Holland said Jim Hiller wasn't going anywhere recently, well, what did you expect him to say? The time for a change is here. Thanks, Edward. Go Kings go. Spike in Fremont. Okay, first off, the name on the birth certificate is actually Edmund and not Edward. And you are showing your age with the Popeye reference, I think. But I, of course, did get it. I think the Ducks win has calmed the waters for now on Jim Hiller. The Kings have a huge opportunity against the Avalanche on Monday. We'll see how that goes. I think the Kings, over the first couple of weeks of January, we'll see how that goes. If they go right back to how they were playing prior to the Ducks game, then I think those waters will start to get a bit choppy again. Frank in Ranchos Palos Verdes says, good morning and belated Merry Christmas. My biggest issue with Hiller is his personnel decisions, from the constant line juggling to his refusal to use Clark as the number one power play D-man, and also why not give him a chance on the penalty kill as well. I am of the opinion that he is clearly the best D-man. Also, his use of Kuzmenko has been awful. He's one of the best possession players, passers on the power play, and his frequent benching of him does not serve the team well or the player. Last comment here on QB, it's too late to move him, as I believe his value is now way too low, and the woulda, coulda, shoulda on the drafting of Stützle instead is a moot point now. I guess we just write it out and hope for the best with QB. Go Kings go. And that was Frank in RPV. I think Clark is getting used more. Like I said, his minutes are up. That's a good thing. I don't know. I'm fine with him running the second power play unit, and I don't think he needs to play on the penalty kill. We've got plenty of players to play on the penalty kill. As far as Byfield, I think he still has value, but again, I don't think the Kings are looking to move him. Finally, Ed in Brea says, first off, Merry Christmas. He then went on to guarantee the Kings were going to lose to the Ducks, and that would officially end the Kings season. I have sources, this is Ed, I have sources that a coaching change is not being considered. They want the players to figure it out. To me, that's a head scratcher. Another source told me that Philip Danault did not get along with Hiller professionally and tuned him out. He saw how the team was not progressing and would not put him in a role that he actually can do, even though Danault was declining. So I believe he asked for a trade. With a coaching change not considered, I wonder if Luc Robitaille is actually making the decisions and if Ken Holland is his yes man. He then went on to talk about how the Chargers would win the division and the Super Bowl. Well, that didn't happen either. Your predictions this week were not very good, Ed. I would love to know who Ed's sources are, number one. And number two, I don't know what is this role that Philip Danault wasn't being put in. He was playing the exact same role that he's always played with the Kings. So I don't understand that. So, yeah, we'll see. All right. Thank you to everyone who took the time to email this week. These shows are literally not possible without your participation. I hope you enjoyed having your voices heard. I hope my responses to your questions were okay. So again, thank you for all the emails. Love the feedback shows. And I don't know how many of these we're going to do where we have so many emails, we have to do more than one, but I'm willing to do these bonus shows if you guys are willing to put in the time to send in your thoughts. Our next show will be following the Kings Avalanche game. We'll see how the Kings fare against the top team in the NHL. It's a huge opportunity for the Kings. Let's see how they can do. Thanks for tuning into Locked On LA Kings, and make sure you subscribe and follow so you get all of the latest episodes. Did Locked On LA Kings make your Spotify Wrapped? If it did, and you want to prove it on social media, you can secure a free month of our brand new Everydayers Club. Just tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform, and we'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayers Club and get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. All right, that'll do it for this week's show. We'd love for you to stay interactive with the show as well on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. All right, I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.